that he could.
Yes, that's
Okay,
what we're
okay, sorry, I
approving.
didn't, RI1, sorry, I didn't, I heard the number, but I was thinking of something else. I was looking at RA1, sorry. Thank you.
Okay, nope, thank you for that clarity. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Adoption of council meeting minutes. We have the May 24th regular council meeting minutes. Are there any error, omissions, comments, questions? Moved approval by Councillor Casper, seconded by Councillor Loggins. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Receipt of draft council committee minutes for information. We will do them as a block. The May 24th Emergency Planning Committee, May 25th Souk Program of the Arts Committee, May 26th the Souk Community Center Advisory Committee meeting minutes. Moved by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any errors, comments, questions? All right, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, so then we will now move to item RI1, our RCMP monthly mayor report, and welcome Staff Sergeant MacArthur.
Good evening, Your Worship and councillors. I think everyone has in front of them the quarterly report for what we have as Q1, Q4 for us. Am I hearing things? Or? Oh, good. Getting worried there for a bit. I'm not sure if you want me to go over that piece by piece or just go right into questions, and I have some peripheral information just about the operation of the detachment.
I suppose there's a few items that sort of stand out just in terms of the percentage changes. No, I think it's just when you look at the numbers, 4/1, there's like 166.67% increase. The other one is a 200% increase. If there's any sort of items that maybe stand out, and then I can field any questions from councillors. Some have dropped, which is great.
Yeah, so I think, Your Worship, you're looking at, one of the items you're looking at is harassment, which has 166, we're talking about 3 files in Q1 of 2015 to 8, and I don't know if it's that significant, but one thing that's driving harassment, and I would expect that that probably will continue to go up because we're now categorizing all cyber harassment in that same category. We used to be just stalking and offenses like this kind of thing. So now that encompasses that new type of harassment, and I'm sure that will go up from there too.
Questions, Councillor Pearson?
Yeah, thank you for your report. One of the questions I always have is on the commercial crime. Is there a dollar value in like year over year? Like I see, you see 5 incidents last year and then it's down to 4, so it's a 20% decrease. Do we attach dollar values or what does it cost? Because some of these businesses that get broken into in the middle of the night and things like that, there's a significant increase in cost because they have to upgrade their security, the windows are busted, the doors are broken, and all the things. So is there a way to track that, or is that part of your report? Or is it even part of your report?
It's not a statistic that we keep, and I don't know how relevant it would be in a small community with like compared to Sydney, kind of a small commercial base. But you're right. Like one year, the statistics might be actually higher without much dollar value, and the next one it could be significantly lower with almost exponentially a growth in dollar value just from one really successful break and enter or hit on a cash machine or this kind of thing. So it's not something we keep. It is something, if council was interested in, that we could get for you, but we'd have to basically go back and manually dig up those files, and then some of them we wouldn't have a final figure. A lot of times there's not a final count, and we don't get a final count on the dollar figure, so we'd have to go back and get them. But
Yeah, through the chair to you, and the reason that I'm asking is that we've approved another police officer, starting later this fall. I get asked the questions. Is that in our tax base? And I guess if I could attach or somehow, and I don't want it I want it maybe to be rudimentary, is to say, okay, what has this actually prevented, in actual terms of dollars and cents to our community? Because there's a real impact. You don't have to talk to somebody very long to find out if their business has been broken into or even their home. That's a significant a piece of dollars that goes into repairing or upgrading their house or their home or their business. And so I think that there's some attachment there. I don't know if I'm asking for something too much. I don't want it to be onerous where you have to spend an extra amount of time, but something that we could talk about, say, what, common knowledge.
It's a fair question, but there's just so many variables
Yeah.
in the statistics here that to measure the presence, the impact of one police officer
Yeah.
would be pretty difficult, pretty speculative task, I would think, yeah.
Okay.
There will be impact,
Yeah.
but especially with respect to commercial B&Es, it is one of our priorities to lower property crime, and we are focused on that. So it's one more person to center on that problem. So, and we've had other challenges, and one is the auxiliary program folding, and Councillor Casper was asking for more efforts in the commercial areas, and that set us back a bit because one of our best people, who's highly trained in crime prevention through environmental design, now is kind of in limbo, not being able to wear his uniform and having to be accompanied by an officer. I don't have the resources really for that. So.
Good. And along the same lines of questioning, thanks for that segue. We had a presentation within the last 2 or 3 council meetings about a private security firm, and we were exploring with staff augmenting your services through eyes and ears on the street, and maybe dedicating some resources to that. How do you see that fitting in with you? And is there a relationship between you and some of the private providers? I know there's a fine line sometimes there, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
It's something since I heard about it,
yes.
And I haven't really heard about it officially. I actually I met with the mayor and the CAO, and we discussed it just a little bit there. And otherwise, I'd been hearing it indirectly, so we have been giving it some thought. I'm open-minded to it. I'm open-minded to anything that's going to improve things in the community. So I would certainly entertain working with Dave. I know that our organization would have some reservations as to the relationship, would want the relationship spelled out.
Right.
And probably what they'd be thinking about is liability, that we're not extending anything to this person that shouldn't be extended, and that the relationship doesn't extend into something that was going to make us vulnerable to lawsuits. So, no, I think it's worth pursuing. The best option probably is, several more police officers, but beat that one to death, haven't I? So.
All right, Councillor Loggins, then Casper.
Thank you. Nice to see you. I feel like we haven't had you at council for a while. Not saying anything bad, just we missed you.
Oh, thank you.
I noticed on here that auto theft has doubled since the last Q1. So I was wondering if that was, where is it? So I have it at 6 in 2015 and 12 in 2016. We're heading into the tourism season right now, so I'm wondering if it was, if it was more downtown Souk, or if it's in the parks areas, if that was one person in particular who caused all of those, or if you can provide some clarity there.
It's not. I can tell you, it's not one person in particular. There was one event with 3 stolen autos, 2 of which had the keys left in them. They're still carded as stolen auto. There's no differentiation between whether you pretty much offer up your vehicle unlocked and with the keys in it, still categorized as a theft. We think of it as a gift. And it also caused other property damage in town. So that's actually, that's 25% of the Q1 2016 statistics. And the other ones were a couple of offenders, at least, and 2 of which were arrested and processed. one of whom's out again, but and not for auto theft, but we know that they're responsible. So other thefts were the charges. Yeah, I don't know. Does that answer your question, Councillor?
It does, yes, and I guess the thing we should be spreading, I guess, is don't leave your keys in the car.
Yeah, it's a difficult one to get out there. Seems intuitive,
Thanks.
but it's not. And it's not just this community where that happens to. But in such a small community that we pay attention to these. But unless it's an area where we're, like assaults, the trend to us, you're right, it's like auto thefts from 6 to 12, that's usually just indicative of a couple of people that became active in that area, drove it up and then either left town or were arrested, and it goes back to normal, right? The same issue that we've had with our thefts from motor vehicles, and which is, I don't know what it reflects in Q1, but is kind of, we've seen a return to normal levels. And that was, I have to tell you that our officers worked very hard on that. Numerous arrests were made. Several people went to jail. It was numerous groups. We used multiple bait cars in Souk, and as a result of that effort and others, it's been beaten down. So, but still, the same problem prevails: open vehicles with valuables, and sometimes hard to believe the valuables people leave in, like things that are valuable sentimentally to them and can never be replaced, and they're left in an open vehicle with laptops and wallets and things. So,
Councillor Casper?
Do you have any suggestions in trying to fix the auxiliary police officer issue, and also how we could perhaps make use of that individual who did have that crime prevention through environmental design training?
well, I think to answer the last part of that, Councillor, that's Maurice O'Connor, and he's going to he'll still make himself available to us for that. So the rest of the issue is, do I have any suggestions? There's no quick fix to it. It actually relates back to the shooting in Alberta where the member died. A auxiliary was with him and presenting an officer safety issue to these people, who are out there without a sidearm, and putting them into those positions. So that's what the RCMP are looking at right now, how to fix that. So no, I don't have any real suggestions for it, other than, it's probably got to go one way or the other. There's not going to be a uniform, or they're going to be carrying sidearms again.
Right. And so, you can't, make a determination of putting someone in at risk and a non-risk situation. It's pretty hard unless they're just locked up in the office, right? And doing office work, and to give other constables or officers the ability to go out in the streets and out in the public. Is that an option, or is it even considered? Like process type stuff, paper.
The problem is when we recruit these volunteers, and when we did recruit them, like a lot of them who are still active, they had sidearms, and then when we took the sidearms away, that was quite a hit, and but a lot of them soldiered on with just the intervention options they did, but with the understanding that they were going to be operational, that they may have some community policing engagement, which we use them for, but they were also going to be able to go out and patrol and actually do real police work. And I think more to the point for most of these people is they wanted to have real impact through something that's interesting in the community. And then to ask them for a wholesale switch to what we brought them on for is difficult. And I think that when the system is reworked, it might be just people that are hired on for that exact purpose as auxiliaries, and a lot of the ones who are hired on for different reasons will probably filter out.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Parkinson?
How is the Citizens on Patrol doing, and how many members do they have? And how often do they go out for you now?
I'm not sure exactly what our numbers are for active Citizens on Patrol. We have quite a list of Citizens on Patrol that with ones that we aren't seeing, and their meetings are combined with the Speed Watch, and I go to some of them. So I'll get you a number. They are active, but I'd say on average we're getting just a few shifts a month from them. Yeah, and the same with the Citizens on Patrol. But it's very well run, and we're looking at ways just to make it a little bit more interesting and get them out a little more. But it is a well-run, cohesive group, and I think it's just incumbent on us to make it a little more appealing to get them out.
In other towns up island where they have Citizens on Patrol, they also have signage as you come into the town saying that the town is patrolled by Citizens on Patrol. So I don't know if that makes a difference by people thinking that there's more eyes on the community, so they then watch what they're doing. So I don't know from other places if that has made a difference or not.
I think it's a good idea. It's something we'll take a look at. And the other sign you see is the Neighborhood Watch sign. And probably as a result of things that transpired here, too, we've geared up on Neighborhood Watch. And I've spoken with the mayor, too, about just settling on a date for a town hall meeting where we'll, at that point, too, we're going to really publicize the Neighborhood Watch and try and get it going. So a few groups, I know this isn't part of your question, but I'm going to answer the non-question anyway. The few groups who are already kind of formed up have stepped up and formalized, and we've had a few others come forward, and that's really just with word of mouth on Neighborhood Watch, which I think is as important as for fighting crime and neighborhood problems as Citizens on Patrol. So it's been a bit of a success, and we're just at the point now where we're going to get it out there and try and get more groups.
Any other comments or questions from council? As the staff sergeant had indicated, we have had conversation about a town hall meeting specifically for the focus on policing. So it will be in the evening, and we're just working out dates. So keep you posted on when that will be. Interestingly enough, I met Councillor Parkinson at Citizens on Patrol many years ago when we were both volunteers. Yes.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was quite,
Wow.
still have the ball cap actually.
You're probably
10 years ago.
wow.
Yeah,
Maybe I'll hear that story down at the Legion.
that's right. But
Yeah, it's certainly a very worthwhile program.
it is. I'm glad
Yeah.
to see that it's still active and running. So maybe the town hall will rejuvenate it further, perhaps. So,
I hope so.
great.
I have just a couple other things,
Yep.
Your Worship, if that's all right. Just very briefly, and part of the problem with getting the town hall going is we just were subjected to a managerial review, which is a routine thing, happens in a detachment every 5 to 6 years. Review services, which is a section of the RCMP, comes over and basically review, and I think probably some of you were interviewed. I know the mayor was, but they interview everybody in the detachment, probably 30 external clients, the band chiefs and fire chief, all kinds of local people that we interact with, and then they go through the whole detachment and cell block operations, all the records, everything was looked at. So that's 1 week, and there was a lot of preparation for that. So that happened last week, and we're heading into the busy summer season, down one supervisor and down one constable position. So we have people, well, not for the constable, we have someone we're looking at, latterling's been latterling in, named for the corporal spot. For the constable spot, we're still doing a search, and then we might have another one September that we have to fill too, right? So we're trying to fill them both, but right now it's just looking like we're going to be a little lean going into the summer, and we've already seen quite a spike in calls just over the last few weeks. So that's it.
All right, well, thank you very much for your report. Look to council for a motion that the 2016 Q1 Souk RCMP detachment report be received for information. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Loggins. Any further discussion? Thank you very much. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried.
Good, thanks.
Okay, our next item of business is item RI2, the Agricultural Land Commission. I believe we have a presentation this evening. Thank you very much for attending and welcome. Okay. Does that chair work at the table okay? Okay.
I'm good,
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, members of the community. Thank you for having us here. My name is Jennifer Dyson. I'm a farmer in Port Alberni and the Vice Chair of the Island Panel. And Kim Grout is our brand new CEO, and we're just thrilled to have her on board. So we're just going to run through some very quick facts, and if there is any questions, we're certainly here. We met briefly with staff earlier as well. Do you want to be the clicker girl? I'll give you the heads up right away. Agriculture is an economic driver in this province, and it's something that as a council, I challenge you to sort of look in that fashion as well. The Agricultural Land Commission, we're an independent administrative tribunal, so we're at arm's length from government. We have a mandate, obviously, that is set out by the Act, and we interpret and apply the legislation that is written by government. The purpose of the Agricultural Land Commission is to preserve agricultural land. That's the number one thing. We call this Section 6. So whenever we're sort of talking about our purpose and role in life, this is what it's all about. Encouraging farming on agricultural land in collaboration with other communities of interest, and encourage local governments. And that's sort of what we really embark on, is within local governments throughout the island, meeting and talking about what their challenges are, what their issues are. We've had a whole host of interesting things happening on the island with trails and so on. So every community is different, but the island is, as I think the rest of our commissioners will say, we are different on Vancouver Island, but we're pretty proud of that fact too. I find this a fascinating slide, and it's just a little picture of the province. But we have a very challenging geography in this province, and it's as you can see, what's in and what's out. 95% of this land base in this province is out, and 5% is in. And after Quebec, we are the second largest land base in Canada that we, in terms of agriculture. But unlike other provinces, we are characterized by mountains and valleys and peaks. So we're very different when you start to look across the prairie, as Vancouver Island is unique, but the rest of this province is very, very unique. So this is another interesting one that we start to look at, the land area of BC. So obviously the purple being what's the land base, and all the way down to that little orange one, that's prime agricultural land. So when we talk about prime, we're talking about the best soils and so on. But we're also talking about suitability when we start to look at the other aspects. The land that's suitable for a range of crops being 2.7, and the entire land reserve. So we hear a lot about the classification system within agriculture being from Class 1 to Class 7. And Class 7 being sort of that kind of thing, and Class 1 to 3 being more of your prime soils. And we're made up of a real variation of soils all over this island, but we've got incredible suitability. We've got climate, and we've got something that's happening very, very fast all over this province, which is climate change. And it's we're constantly being poised to sort of look to the future, and that's also our key role. So here's a math question. So if you look at the top three there, Okanagan Island and South Coast, that comes to 10. That's classified as Zone 1. Only 10% of the land that's in the ALR is in Zone 1. The rest of it is all in Zone 2. So if you start to think about class or Zone 1, We also have a very interesting thing. We have two triangles, the east coast of Vancouver Island going all the way up into the mainland, and then we also have the Okanagan into the Kootenays. And we also, there is some of the most productive agriculture in this province, even though it's only at 10% of the land base. So it's a little interesting statistic, but we're smaller parcels than obviously the great vastness of the north and the interior and the Peace, but we've got some incredible agriculture happening certainly on this island. It's pretty remarkable. And I'm going to actually get Kim to do all of the dirty work and talking about all of the act and the changes. So go for it, girl.
Thank you, Jennifer. So I was just going to talk about some of the things that probably have changed maybe since the last time we spoke to Sue as a council and as staff, and that's related to some of the act and regulation changes that have happened in the last couple of years. So in September 2014, our act was actually changed, and that split the ALR into two zones, Zone 1 and Zone 2, which Jennifer was just talking about and alluding to, and I'll touch a little bit more on it. It actually legislated the commission back into 6 regional panels. So prior to 2014, the commission was one commission, one board, one entity, and was making decisions on ALR applications across the province. There was one representative from each of the 6 regions and the chair. Along in this change as well was redefining the role of the chair, which I'll talk about a little bit, and the introduction of Section 4.3 in addition to Section 6, which applies specifically to Zone 2. Jennifer spoke a little bit about what we consider Zone 1 and Zone 2. So those are our 3. Zone 1 consists of South Coast, your island panel, of which you're part, in Okanagan. And Zone 2 is the Kootenays interior and the northern panel. Section 4.3, that was the new section of the Act provided for to address Zone 2. And in this particular regulation, what sometimes I think is misunderstood is that the purpose as set out in Section 6, which Jennifer just spoke about briefly, continues to be the priority. This section of the Act makes specific reference to A through D in descending order of priority. So Section 6 considerations followed by economic, cultural, social values, regional and community planning objectives, and any other prescribed considerations, which at this time there aren't any from the province. I think what we've seen in Zone 1 and Zone 2 is some confusion between the zones about how decisions are made. In watching the commissioners and the panels deliberate, I can tell you that in both zones they give consideration to economic, social, cultural, community planning objectives, OCPs, for example. And yet in Zone 2, they're actually prescribed by legislation and have to be spoken to specifically in the Commission's decision in terms of how those considerations were granted. But that being said, I still see the same kinds of deliberations happening at the panels across the province. As mentioned, we've gone back to 6 regional panels. So as mentioned, Jennifer Dyson is a vice chair. She chairs the island panel and is accompanied by 2 commissioners. That panel is the decision maker for the island panel. Our chair, in his version of this presentation, likes to point out that it's believed that perhaps he is the czar of agricultural land use decision making, and when in actual fact he's the one commissioner that doesn't sit on a panel and doesn't make a decision related to applications. And this is a bit of a change from the previous structure that existed. It was the chair and 6 commissioners who made up the panel for the entire province and made decisions. The chair has some responsibilities with respect to oversight, which I'll touch on. The full commission, which is all 19 members, including the chair, I'll talk a little bit about their role. Our vice chairs and the chair make up our executive, and I'll just touch briefly on how that works. With respect to the chair, under the legislation, the chair is actually responsible for referring all applications to the regional panel. Our chair does have the opportunity to redirect some applications if he deems them to be provincially significant to the executive, but since our chair, Mr. Frank Leonard, has been with us since February 2015, all applications have gone to the regional panel. He has spoken that he believes probably one of the first applications he'll send to the executive will be the Massey Tunnel replacement between Richmond and Delta. But that being said, up until this point, he hasn't referred any applications. What I think is different is the chair has 60 days to review every decision made by the panel and confirm its consistency with Section 6 and Section 4.3. If the chair believes that any panel coming from a decision is not consistent with Section 6 or Section 4.3, he can ask for it to be reconsidered by the executive. We believe this provision was put into the Act with this restructuring to provide some consistency across the panels with respect to the chair. So what you will see sometimes is decisions will come out, and in that decision letter, it identifies that the chair has 60 days to review that decision and make a determination on its consistency. So it's a little bit different than perhaps a public hearing process where you give bylaws readings, and once those readings are completed, that decision is final. There is opportunity for both the chair and third party actually to request reconsideration. This is just speaking specifically to the chair's authority under Section 6 and Section 4.3 to ensure that the purpose of those two sections is being adhered to. The executive is responsible for deciding any applications the chair might refer directly, but up until this point there haven't been, as well as deciding on applications a regional panel might feel has some precedent-setting nature, might actually in fact be provincially significant, or if, for example, due to conflict or availability, the panel actually might not feel that they have enough quorum to make that decision, they can refer it to the executive. And then making reconsideration determinations. So under our legislation, affected third parties or interested third parties can request a decision of the panel be reconsidered. This is limited to a very narrow scope, and I think there's a belief out there that there's a larger appeal opportunity with respect to panel decisions, but really it has to either be determined that the panels deliberated on false information that wasn't correct at the time, or information that wasn't available. That being said, only the executive can determine if that test is met, which means if there are reconsideration requests, which the executive do review monthly, staff aren't able to direct reconsiderations away from the executive. They're all presented to the executive. If the executive determines that there is some new information that wasn't available at the time of the decision or something in error, they send it back to the panel to reconsider, so the executive themselves aren't making that decision. And right now, the way the process works, there's really no time horizon on when a reconsideration can be requested, and there's no fee. So I think from a commission workload perspective, we actually feel that we're spending almost as much time, if not more time, reconsidering applications even more than once. And
for many years.
Yes, and so this is something that we would like to raise with the provincial government. The full commission, which is the body of 19, only sits right now twice a year. They are responsible for developing our overarching governance policies. Your staff are probably familiar with some of the land use policies and things we have on our website, and those policies are all adopted by the commission. And it's that entity that recommends legislative or regulatory change, deals with any boundary reviews that are initiated by the commission specifically, and are responsible for ensuring that local government bylaws and policies are consistent with the Act. With respect to some of the regulation changes that have happened in the last couple of years, in 2014 there was a number of changes to regulation following a large consultation process that was undertaken in 2014. Just some highlights of the amendments include medicinal marijuana being clearly identified as a permitted farm use, the identification of cooperatives as being a model to allow the consolidation of farm retail or processing to happen in every other commodity other than wineries, because there's some concessions for wineries. Breweries, distilleries, and meaderies are permitted with the same 50% input. We have noted, however, that breweries really are limited in their opportunity to grow 50% of their product. Most of the grain that's required to produce beer has to come from outside the province, so we do feel there was a little bit of expectation elevated with respect to breweries, when in fact growing hops or some of the flavorings by itself actually doesn't generate enough input to likely see them in the ALR, so there's a little bit of work for us to do there. And there were some introductions and provisions introduced for providing for leasing of farmland to try to provide some opportunities for those maybe entering the market and not being able to afford purchase. We always like to talk about local governments. Local governments made up of municipal and regional governments actually make up and cover 75% of that ALR that we talked about. And we think you're extremely important stakeholders, and we actually consider you our partners. You're the first step in the application process, and while the Act and legislation requires some consistency between our bylaws, we're actually really interested in working with you collaboratively on the development of official community plans and implementing bylaws like zoning bylaws. Not so that you feel like you have to work to achieve that consistency on your own, but that we're here to work with you to achieve your community objectives and talk about how we can work collectively to preserve that important resource, the ALR. And as well, working together to achieve compliance. This is a part of our portfolio that we're working to improve. We received an increase in budget, which I'll talk about briefly. But still, even with those additional provincial resources, it's something that we really need to work with our local government and other agency partners to achieve. So we were very fortunate this last fiscal round to have received basically a 33% increase in our base budget. This is something that doesn't happen a lot in provincial government, and I don't think happened anywhere else in provincial government, so we are extremely fortunate. And this injection of funding is allowing us to actually get our panels out on the ground, visiting sites, coming to engage with local governments, allowing staff to engage with local governments. It's probably been a while since you probably recalled a visit from the Agricultural Land Commission, and we're really excited to be out and working with our partners, as well as to make some improvements on compliance and enforcement. Within our existing budget envelope, we were able to go from 2 officers to 4 compliance staff, and our target is to go to 6 with the budget funding we've had. And while for us that's a tremendous increase, I mean, at one point we were down to 1 officer for the entire province, it's still 6 officers for the entire province, and we're quite interested in looking at the opportunities to work collaboratively, even with eyes on the ground, in terms of trying to achieve those collective objectives. Having come from local government most recently, local governments have tools that the Agricultural Land Commission simply doesn't have. Ticketing, violation direction orders, those are actually things that we don't have in our toolkit now, and we're preparing some business cases to go to the province to try to see if we can achieve those. But as you know, taking everyone to court all of the time is time-consuming and costly, and so what that results in is a fairly high-level prioritization of enforcement action based on budget, and we'd like to see that turned around. Effective April 1st, there were some changes made to our fees. They were $600, and they've gone up to $1,500 and $900, depending on your zone. It unfortunately didn't include an increase in the local government portion of that fee. Our fees were increased, though, in order to attempt to offset some of that budget increase that the province did provide for us. As well, it introduced some new fees for longer-term decisions that require some monitoring and staff resources from the Commission to check up on. And with anything, with an increase in budget came an expectation of service delivery. And so we did, the Minister did direct that ALC decisions be made within 60 business days. And there's some caveats there. We can pause the clock if some additional information is required, or if the Commission needs to go out to a site visit. But once that information is provided or the site visit concludes, like for example, we went out and saw one today, tomorrow that clock starts ticking again on the process. And if we are unable to render a decision within 90 business days, we are to refund the ALC portion of that fee. We're working to develop a comprehensive compliance and enforcement approach. This is part of the Commission that over time really hasn't benefited from the development of procedures and guidelines, and we'd like to actually improve the information that's available for the public around that process. And some directives around engagement. An annual local government survey. We'd really like to be hearing from local governments about what your challenges and opportunities are, and if there's patterns within local government and any recommendations we can make with respect to regulatory weaknesses, perhaps, that together as a collective we can raise our voice to the province. The ALC does identify things, but again, it's just the ALC putting forward the suggestion that this is what we're hearing. But if we can document that through survey and get great feedback back from local governments, then we think we can develop stronger business cases for change in legislation. And the last one will be interesting. All tribunals and commissions are required to do annual client surveys. We suspect that perhaps if you didn't get a great decision from us, you might not think we did a great job, and if we gave you the kind of decision you wanted, maybe our survey results might indicate otherwise, but we'll see how it goes. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Grout and Ms. Dyson. Any questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Casper?
So my question relates to just working together with local government and making sure that our land use plans are supportive of ALR policies.
Yes.
Yes.
So, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but so that's to make sure that our zoning bylaws, where we have land that is zoned or recognized as agricultural land, that, let's say, all of the permitted uses that are laid out in the regulations and the permitted uses that have been granted by the commission should be included in our zoning bylaw. So there's no ifs, ands, or buts, right? So that the local government really has no authority to override anything that's permitted on ALR land. Sort of stemming to the Right to Farm Act and that kind of stuff, right?
And it would be wonderful to be in a position to be working together collaboratively,
Right,
so that
right.
we're all in sync. And that's the kind of work that our staff and your staff can do ahead of the game, ahead of third reading of your OCP. So it's an exercise that we all need to go through on a regular basis or every 5 years, but it's a good one to do, and it provides some opportunities for some incredible opportunities for agriculture. We can't forget that it is a great economic development driver.
If I may further, I'm of the opinion, maybe I'm a minority, that if somebody has agricultural land, then they should be permitted to do whatever activities they are permitted on that ALR land. Because the land is there for a purpose, and local government in no way should get into the business of trying to override and regulate and control and to dictate to somebody who has the right to carry out a farming activity. And because you talk about economic security and all the other things that we're going to be faced with in the not too distant future, then local government, in my mind, should play an important role in removing the red tape, removing the roadblocks, and actually subscribing to ALR land and its principles, because we're not making any more. And I dare say that there isn't much agricultural land or potential that's outside of the current boundaries. There really isn't. Unless it was tree farms or something along those lines. But basically, what we see is what we've got. And I've been a supporter for many, many years. But sometimes I think local government tries to stick its nose in where it shouldn't belong. But
If I may, I really like those comments. But it's also incumbent on us as farmers to work with and help educate. I was sitting in the audience, and the first person I meet is a farmer in front of me. So it's a pretty cool thing. But I also suggest that as you move forward in your OCP, an ag advisory, connect with the people that are growing food within this community too.
Councillor Ray, then Pearson.
Thank you, and thank you very much for your presentation. Just interested in the differences in the application fees. You're smiling. You probably figured this was going to come. Souk being in Zone 1 would be subjected to a $1,500 fee as opposed to Zone 2 at $900. I'm just wondering what the principles were for deciding that.
Kim gets the hard time.
Well, actually, the simple answer is we'd need to speak with the provincial government because the fees were not within our control and were adopted by regulation and passed along to us. But in the minister's speaking notes that I reviewed anticipating this question was the Ministry of Agriculture appeared to identify a difference in the farm revenues generated between Zone 1 and Zone 2 as their rationale for a different fee structure. But if you have any further questions beyond that, you're welcome to direct them to the Ministry of Agriculture.
Thank you very much. And I think it's just one of those things when there's a broad brush used to create that kind of regulation, somewhere like Souk that's quite rural, even though, 20 kilometers down the road, you're into the bigger areas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Pearson.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. And I got a couple of comments and then a couple of questions. I guess for me is that I've always kind of been confused about the the word reserve in the Agricultural Land Commission and Land Reserve. What steps does the commission, or do you guys have, what role do you play in stifling or containing, because I'm going to assume that 90% of the applications are removal.
No, they're
No?
not.
How much are they?
No, we did them. So last year, 508 applications, only 90 of them were exclusions, and most of those were small transportation infrastructure related. So, what are we talking less than?
It's not a great percentage, but I will say as a commissioner, I think it always amazes me. 99% of all applications really have nothing to do with agriculture, but they have everything to do with who's on the land today, and it's around subdivision. Very, very few are for agriculture, for legitimate farm purposes, right. And it's those are the easy ones. But the succession, it's subdivision, it's
non-farm use.
Non-farm use.
Non-farm use is our biggest application category. Non-farm use and subdivision. It's not exclusion or inclusion.
Okay. So that does answer that question, and maybe I didn't articulate that well. So yep. I think I'm on the right track. When I look over, and I mean, you probably get this question everywhere you go. You look over on the Lower Mainland, and you think, okay, there's the most prime agricultural land, and you're Zone 1 or whatever you told me, mm-hmm. And it seems to be getting gobbled up because of the economic benefit of not having it in farmland. So if there's a process somewhere in there that it can be removed, or non-farm use, which is subdivision and houses or whatever we're going to put on it, if it can be removed, then the price actually is excluding farmers from that very fundamental thing that you're trying to do. And that, yep. To me, I guess I want to ask a question is, what proactive approaches do you take in a municipality or in a local government of looking at where the agricultural land is currently situated and determining it's not valuable as agricultural land? And historically, because every time we're sitting here, we hear these applications, somebody says, oh, it's not worth farming, it has low value, it's not that, so we're better off to turn it into houses. Does the commission itself ever take a proactive approach to say, okay, these are in there and they're never coming out?
I'd like to.
That's our starting position.
Yeah, it's always our starting position, and it goes back to what we were talking with staff about. It's that planning. We recognize as communities grow that they need places to grow, and I think how we approached it is that we want you to challenge and we want you to look deeply within your communities and about what's important, but maybe look at agriculture as the last resort rather than the first resort. And that's been a kind of a motto that we've kind of looked at from the island. And I can tell you that every single one of the local governments on this island have risen to that challenge. And I know that my colleagues on the South Coast or in the Lower Mainland are doing the same. There's an awful lot of things, and Kim will tell you that in the Lower Mainland there can be truck parking, there can be fill, there can be all kinds of things that are happening that and unless we've got our eyes and ears out there wandering around, which we're not, and this is that partnership that we look at with local government, there is a sense and a perception that it's being gobbled up on the Lower Mainland, but it's no different than the island. It's the same set of rules apply, and we make decisions with those lenses, and we always look last at agricultural land, because sometimes I think Port Alberni is very much like a souk in that sense. We're a forestry town, fishing, it's been retirement. It hasn't really changed an awful lot, but our economic development officer has made agriculture a priority. And I can tell you, it's breathing new blood back into those that are kind of like, oh, what are we going to do? But there are some incredible challenges, but there's incredible opportunities. Right.
And sorry, maybe just to add to that, I think, the tone is set at the local level, and it's set in your official community plan. And I saw my first OCP that put agriculture in the employment lands category, because it was recognized that with those farm gate sales and not just the role agriculture has today, but the potential agriculture has in the future. I think your comments, what the commissioners deal with all the time is the ask of the moment in comparison to the needs of the future, and climate change and and we know you can do way more with less. That doesn't mean we're encouraging subdivision, because
Right.
sometimes those comments are construed that way. And we know Van City just actually did a recent report hitting on the very point you just raised, that subdivision and non-farm use are driving up the price of agricultural land. And to continue the argument that we should subdivide it to make it smaller and more affordable is actually just going to keep driving you down that affordability. So the commissioners are very live to that, and deliberate on those sort of points on a regular basis. But that being said, they are independent decision makers, and they're the ones that are deliberating on that process.
Right. And I'm really, really happy to hear you say that, because I think that the true farmers of the world, the people who have that vision, who want to make it work, if you can say no before they ask, it will keep that price down. And I'm not and that's the OCP and the bylaw piece of it, because if there's a maybe in there, well, that suddenly gets that price creep back in the back end of it, and then it's that psychological. Okay, well we can get
And that
this
was
up.
the intention of the reserve, was to keep
Absolutely.
land affordable for farming, because we all knew it
And
would
it
be
seemed-
priced out. It's like you as local governments, you identify something as industrial, and if you let commercial go in there, commercial will pay those rates that industrial can't. And next thing you know, you don't have an industrial park, you have an extension of your, commercial retail, which wasn't what you wanted, because you get a higher class taxation out of industrial. Well, the same thing happens to agriculture. You start to allow those residential, those non-farm uses, you start to commercialize it and turn it into residential. It starts to drive those prices up, and that is the rub. That's sort of the insatiable appetite for the ALR. It's just sitting there. People are looking at it.
Right.
We are the envy of the world in terms of what we have here, and I think Councilman Casper said it. It's extraordinary. People from all over the world look to BC and say, "Wow, how do you do it?" And we're struggling. We're feeling a little like gatekeepers, but the challenges are enormous. There's no question. The pressures on the land base today are as great as when the land reserve came into being, and it is incumbent on all of us to sort of really be futurists rather than in a political cycle. And I think that's our challenge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, so on that note, Council, we're going to move into our delegation portion of the agenda. First one up is D1, Quinn Yates with the Edward Milne Community School. Councillor Loggins, you need to step out. Okay. So you're staying in for the delegation. Okay. All right. Welcome, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Community members, council members, Mayor Tate, thank you for having me. My name is Quinn Yates, and I work as an outdoor literacy coordinator for the Edward Milne Community School Society. We are a nonprofit organization, and as my job title implies, my main responsibility is to encourage and facilitate outdoor physical activity in Sooke. I'm here today to bring awareness to the Sooke Harbor Festival. This free event will be taking place on August 20th at the Ed McGregor Park Boardwalk, and will be centered around 2 separate kayak and stand-up paddleboard races. We see this as a beneficial event for the District of Sooke and its residents, and are asking for your sponsorship by way of waiving the $250 park fee associated with the boardwalk's use. The kayak race will span approximately 7 kilometers from Cooper's Cove through the Sooke Basin to a finish line adjacent to the boardwalk. The second portion of the event will consist of a stand-up paddleboard race that will follow a 1-kilometer route through the Sooke Harbor. The boardwalk will play host to a number of attractions, including live music, vendors and artisans, food, and most excitingly, a sponsored recreation area where people can come down to try kayaking or stand-up paddleboarding for free. This area will be offered by several of our sponsors and offer instruction and information on their use. We want to build a day that highlights the potential of the Sooke Harbor and engages the community at large. The Sooke Harbor Festival will exemplify the beauty of our coastal town while taking advantage of the resources Sooke has. Although this town may have been built on the extraction of fisheries and forest, Sooke has the potential to be the tourist hub of southern Vancouver Island, but lacks exposure and relevance within the CRD. Our local fishing, hiking, surfing, and small town feel are comparable to that of Tofino, one of the most successful tourist industry on the island, but we have not yet entered the same niche market. Our activities alone could form the basis of a booming tourism economy, but without exposure, it's a lofty ideal. Souk Harbor Festival not only presents an opportunity to encourage tourism in the Souk municipality, but has the potential to increase youth participation in our community. There seems to be a skewed definition of youth engagement in our country. We form programs and events for those in high school, those with children, and those that are considered elderly, but there's a large group that slips through the cracks. The definition of youth is someone between the ages of 13 and 25, but those over 17 are often overlooked. We see this event as a way to engage this often ignored demographic in a healthy, community-enriching event. This festival will provide the community with an opportunity to showcase the recreational potential of our waterways and parks, promote tourism in our municipality, and most importantly, give our community a chance to come together for some friendly competition, music, and fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yates. I think it's...
Yeah, I'll just declare a conflict of interest since this is one of my wonderful employees.
Okay. We'll call you back.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think it's exciting that you have this event planned to draw positive attention to the harbor is very exciting, and it's excellent timing. So well done. Good for you. Thank you very much for the presentation. Any other comments from Council? Councillor Parkinson?
I would like to move that the district waive the fee for the Souk Harbor Festival for August 20th.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Ray. Any discussion on the motion?
One question.
Councillor
So
Casper?
could you see this building to becoming more and more?
That's the idea, yes. We are hoping to run this as an annual event and hoping to, whether it be next year or the year after, depending how this first one goes, to include Ed McGregor Park and its amphitheater and more musicians and more activities for the community. So this is just kind of the building
So
blocks.
maybe kayaking workshops and things like that?
For sure. This year we'll have, we have 3 separate sponsors from around the South Vancouver Island. One is offering us 10 kayaks to use with instruction how to use them, so anyone can come down for free and try those. Same with stand-up paddleboarding. We have someone in Souk offering up 6 with the same instruction, and also another person offering ocean yoga on the boardwalk and on stand-up paddleboards. So that could grow into
Well, I
something
just want to
much
give
bigger.
you some encouragement. I was in Port Angeles a few months ago and witnessed a very big kayaking event, and it was a 3-day event. People stayed in hotels, came from everywhere, and it's along the lines of what you're just describing, so I think it's great.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Councillor Parkinson?
I was just wondering if it's part of the festival that's going to be coming to Souk next year for the Salmon Festival for the 150th anniversary.
We are not...
Not including it?
No, we are not including that. We did talk to them about maybe partnering, but
Right.
nothing officially, so...
Okay, it might
Same
come
one.
forward though, eh?
Yeah.
Good, thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions? All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much, and
Great.
good luck.
Thank you very much.
And if we could get Councillor Loggins' return, please. Okay, our next presentation, our delegation this evening, is from Ms. Britt Santowski of the Souk Pocket News.
Just start?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so my name is Britt Santowski, and I live at 2206 Church Road. I would like to submit to Council that Souk Pocket News, formally registered as an online newspaper, be considered a viable communication resource for the District of Souk. While it's been called many things, at its core, Souk Pocket News is an electronic newspaper. You have that paperwork in the agenda before you. For your interest, social media enables networking, and a blog is about the personal voice of the website owner. SPN does not facilitate networking, and the opinions that are posted on SPN are primarily those of the readership. They are those of your constituents. Call it what you want, it doesn't change the fact that the readership numbers of SPN are astronomical. The reach of this publication, when I left today to come to this meeting, was 165,050 over the past 30 days. That's an average of 5,500 hits every day. How effective is it? 5 examples. 1, a man was looking to find a former colleague who had moved to Souk. After going through other avenues, he turned to SPN. By 7:30, we posted his letter. By 11 o'clock, contact had been made. 2, a couple from Alberta read on Souk Pocket News the closure of the reading room. Instead, the reading room did not close. They bought the business, moved to Souk, and kept that business and those jobs here. 3, we posted the RCMP's recent search for a missing person. That article received over 19,000 views. The Facebook post was shared, reached over 13,000 people, and it was shared 339 times. 4, the people of Souk. We won the Chamber's People Choice Award, the only peer-elected award handed out that evening. You have in the package that I just handed out before you pages of testimonials from Souk businesses and Souk residences. 5, even your staff and council have turned to SPN to post items when they want the readership's attention. Souk Pocket News is not dependent on a single advertising account. It is a profitable business with a strong community support. My ask of council is twofold. First, that the district copy all media releases into a central, publicly accessible space. That way, there is no exclusion and no preferential treatment, accidental or otherwise. And second, that the District of Souk consider advertising in this online newspaper. We both, after all, serve the same primary client, which is the resident of Souk. I believe that if Souk Council is genuinely interested in communicating with the people of Souk effectively and repeatedly, you will incorporate Souk Pocket News into your communication plan and your advertising budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Santowski. I will share that our CAO, working with our leadership team, is crafting a current communication strategy. We don't really have one per se in the municipality at the moment that is relevant. It could be a bit dated. And within this, it's including social media and online media and the like to bring it more into more relevant terms. So that is in the works right now. It's still a draft, and the intent, as my understanding, is to look at all forms of media, including yours, and bringing that forward. We don't have a policy in place right now for media, so that is something that is being actively worked on at the moment.
Okay, my first ask, though, was about putting all press releases on a centrally accessible space.
That's part of this strategy.
Okay, thank you.
And same with realigning our website so that it's easier to navigate. Resources are, I mean, even sometimes counselors and myself have difficulty accessing the information that we want. So all of that is being done at the moment, and it's just all a part of the same piece so that we can all access pieces. Councillor Loggins?
Thank you for coming. I think it was a great presentation. I liked the little tips that you gave about how you have reached out to the community with your business. It's been a great asset to the community ever since it started, so thank you for that. And congratulations again on your award with the Chamber. That was quite an accomplishment. We do, as the Mayor said, have that communications plan coming, and I would love to have SPN as part of that as well.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Santowski, for your presentation tonight. And I think as the world changes, we have to realize is that there's different mediums for communication. So it's your delegation is timely because again we have that we've asked for that as part of our strategic plan for communicating with the public. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Parkinson?
And just to get the ball rolling, I'd like to move that the District of Souk accept the Souk Pocket News as a viable communication resource, and that all 3 news outlets, the Souk Voice News, the Souk News Mirror, and the Souk Pocket News outlets, be all given equal opportunity.
May I just amend your motion that it's the West Shore Voice?
Oh, excuse me, I should know better. Thank you.
Is there a seconder for the motion? seconded by Councillor Loggins. Discussion on the motion? Councillor Pearson,
Yeah,
then
okay,
Gasper?
I was looking over it. Okay. I like the motion, but I don't want to restrict it to only 3 newspapers in Souk, because if we're well, and that's what I'm saying. You said 3 on there? Yeah. So I think that I like the motion, but I think you got to make it more wide open to newspapers in general.
That's perfectly fine to do that.
Yeah, I don't think you should just limit it to that, because I think it's part of our strategic plan. We're going to look at all mediums of communication anyways, as I understand. Thank you.
No, that is valid, because the Times columnist, there are subscribers locally, it is online. Like there may be times where there is relevant pieces and other local magazines may appear. So any further, so there is a motion, pardon me, Councillor Casper.
Yeah, I'd just like to remind all the council members that our staff had actually sent us an email in regard to this matter and strongly recommended that we not make any decision this evening because of the fact a strategic communications plan is being prepared, and that's going to be done in conjunction with meeting all the provisions of our overall strategic plan. So, I personally think it's premature. I don't like making these types of decisions on the fly. No disrespect to the presenter, but I think that we should actually see the information that our staff is putting together. Our CAO is in the Lower Mainland right now at a conference that's dealing with economic development aspects around social media and other forms or venues of publication and getting the word out about promoting job opportunities within communities, municipalities, etc. So, I cannot support the recommendation or the motion on that basis. I would agree to defer the decision until we receive our communication strategic plan.
Councillor Loggins and Ray?
I was actually not happy that we received an email from staff directing us how to vote before the council meeting. And I don't see how this recommendation or this motion here doesn't restrict what the staff have been working on. It just says that we would like to include the Souk Pocket News in there as well. So there will be no restrictions on our communications with the public based on this motion. It just acknowledges that all local media outlets should be given equal opportunity, and that's perfectly fair.
Councillor Ray?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. In terms of the motion and the 2 requests, I think it is premature to be looking at financial implications that could come from this decision. And as I've said through my first term and now into my second term, I don't like making these kind of decisions on the fly. We are aware that there is a report coming, and I'd like to see what that report says before I'm making a decision. So it's not to say in the future that I won't support it, but consistent with my previous voting is not to be voting on something like this that has financial implications for the district before a report from staff.
Thank you, Councillor Ray. Councillor Parkinson?
I did not see it as being a financial obligation. I saw it as giving information to all news outlets so that they all have equal information at the same time to be able to give out. So it is right now, as Ms. Stankowski said, that the information is so that everybody gets it at the same time and it's given fairly. So this is just for information, and it is not, doesn't mean that we're going to be putting ads in anybody's newspaper. What it means is everybody will have equal opportunity in the news outlets. And I think that is pretty fair to be doing that. Thank you.
Just a question to Councillor Parkinson. Our Director of Corporate Services has posted the motion, and that's capturing exactly what your intent was. Okay?
Correct. And the other thing, too, is we did receive an email today about a communication strategy, but it was 2 hours before our meeting. So this was all out beforehand, so.
Councillor Loggins?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that there in no way is this a motion on the fly, as we've had this agenda for quite some time now and known exactly why Ms. Santowski would be here.
Councillor Ray?
I just might remind the council that this is a delegation. This is not an item of business on our agenda, and it is, in my opinion, it is a motion on the fly.
Okay, well, the motion is on, okay, is there any further discussion on the motion? We do have the communication strategy that is in the works and coming our way. This is just, I see it sort of as direction or council's intent, what council may feel is direction to staff to include in that communication strategy as it's being crafted. Councillor Berger?
Yes, thank you. I don't have an issue with the motion, as I don't see it being binding, but just with the forethought that we all know a report is coming to us. I mean, there was the Souk Scoop. There was, I mean, there's a few other avenues, and I don't want to exclude anybody. And I would like to see, like, instead of just, and no, with no disrespect to Ms. Santowski, I'd like to see all news outfits. Anybody else that has a registered entity within our community be included. So it's all inclusive. And my hope was that that would come in the staff report. That anybody that has a registered business within the community of Souk be treated as an equal opportunity.
I think that's where when Councillor Pearson raised his comments that the motion was changed to broaden that for everyone. Well, it says all local media outlets to be given them. I don't think it's necessarily to list them all. Any further discussion on the motion? I'll call the question then. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Councillor Casper, Councillor Pearson, and Councillor Ray are opposed, so motion is carried. Okay, thank you, Ms. Santowski. Our next item of business is Ms. Gail Hall, item D3, public forum, town hall meeting.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tonight, I asked members of council to consider holding public forums or some similar gathering on a regular basis, perhaps one per month or more often, depending on the number of issues of concern. All the promises from the election regarding inclusiveness, transparency, and the like have long since disappeared. Virtually every word spoken by a member of the public in this room is governed by a dictate from council or staff. We need to be able to gather from time to time in a less formal atmosphere and have the opportunity to ask questions that have no other venue. For example, was it staff or council who decided that agenda packages would no longer be available to the public unless each printed page was paid for? Has an application been sent to the Land Commission for removal of the property on Souk River Road? How many statutes were violated in the building of the bike trail? Has the $765,000 owing to the Park Reserve Fund be paid back? There's so many more questions with no venues. Tonight's agenda is a perfect example of excluding members of the public regarding land use issues. The bylaws appear on the agenda tonight for first and second reading and the scheduling of public hearings. There will be no opportunity for members of the public to ask questions, make comments, or have their concerns considered until the public hearing. Public hearings are a waste of time. We can speak, we can ask questions, we can look at maps on the wall. We cannot, however, have our questions answered. We can also be assured that decisions have already been made, either in one of the many in-camera meetings or elsewhere. The official community plan points out the necessity for either the developer or the council to hold information meetings regarding land use issues. It's an ignored requirement. Some time ago, we were informed by Councillor Carrie Ray that a review of our zoning bylaw was underway, necessary because there had been no updates since 1999. We've had 2 or maybe 3 updates in the last 4 years as Councillor Ray sat at the table. Also, there is to be an update of the official community plan now with no committee or public involvement. I have no doubt that these matters will not be carried out in a public forum. The removal of Land Use Environment Committee and the failure to appoint an advisory planning commission, the endless in-camera meetings all point to a governance by council which has simply no use for public input. The council members whose duty it is to represent the taxpayers have an opportunity and a duty to take the leadership role. A move to provide a forum for public consultation would be a strong statement of leadership and a means to tell us that, in fact, council is in charge. Many people, including me, see a council which has turned our community over to a CAO and her corporate officer who have yet to win the support of many of us. For me, it is a feeling that the town that I love has become a toy, a place where strangers with little or no experience play keep away with all the pieces, make up new rules, and behind closed doors change the characteristics that make our town special. And this is all accomplished with the blessing of council. Sooke is not a toy to be bounced around by any one group. We have a rich and varied history, and every new member of staff and every elected official needs to remember that they have a duty to the residents to respect the wishes of the public with every action they take. If I send an email to Mayor Tate, to CAO Sullivan, to certain members of staff, my response comes from the corporate officer. I'm told by that same corporate officer, that should be acting corporate officer, that all such emails must be vetted through his office. Why? Was this policy set by council, by some resolution? We don't know. And I'll end with a quote from our current CAO who was speaking to the public when she was a candidate for council in Colwood. Her comment was, "Your voice matters and should be heard regularly and often. I support public forums to gauge public opinion on major expenditures and the other important issues." To which I say, well said, Madam Sullivan, even if you're not here tonight. And I thank you.
Can we stop the clapping, please? It's a neutral environment. Thank you. Any comments, questions from council? Councillor Parkinson?
I would like to make a move that council hold a town hall meeting as stated in our strategic plan to enhance our communications with our residents and for community engagement.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Loggins. Discussion on the motion. It is in our strategic plan under our governance section that our intentions were to hold at least 2 public forums on an annual basis, which we have not done. There is the one on the RCMP, but that's outside of us. I think in part council has been actively pursuing our strategic plan. We have a new leadership town in place, so sometimes I think there's just a lot going on and we're waiting for the pieces to come together. I have had conversation with staff in terms of scheduling and timing and so forth. Anytime we do something in the summer, it feels flat, and it's just the worst time to do it. Putting something together in June right now, I think, is too hectic, so we're looking towards the fall. The idea of October, and again, we're stretching it out, but September, everyone's back to work, back to school. Council's away at UBCM, so October just seems like a better time frame. And then I think as we work together, we can look at then scheduling in advance what our 2017 would look like. I've also been away for 4 months of this year, so it's getting myself back into a rhythm. So it's the case of there's just a lot of pieces, and I don't think it was an intent by council to not do certain things. It's the case that everyone is busy and focused, and we're trying to do things, and perhaps we're just not communicating out what we're trying to accomplish or what we're doing because everyone's working. So that is something that's in place right now. There is a motion that's been seconded. Any comments from council on that? Councillor Berger, then Pearson.
Yes, thank you. In the past, we've always held our annual report as sort of its own separate, I guess you could call it a town hall. So whenever we approve our annual report, that's the opportunity for anybody to speak to anything within this document. And if you read the document, it's basically everything that council's done for the year. So
That's true. Actually, that's coming up the 27th of June.
So that, I guess that would be my suggestion, is that when we review and adopt this annual report, we stay as we'd had in the last, few years and make that our annual meeting.
Yep, it would still be an annual meeting because that's the format. But I think and we can do that for the annual report, but I think what I hear from the public is something not as formal. So we have our annual meeting because it's the annual report in chambers, but to have something more like at the community hall, perhaps with some of the plans that we have underway, whether it's, we had the town center diagram, we have the health summit, like those sorts of pieces that are display boards and perhaps a few presentations from the various departments.
Similar to the Rotary Fair.
Pardon me?
Said similar to the Rotary Fair.
Exactly, similar to the Rotary Fair, but under council's structure. We've done things like that at the community hall. They haven't been overly well attended, but we've had them and we've provided the venue and the opportunity. So I think that's something, and with the communication strategy, I think it's getting the word out that they're happening, and also sometimes our timing has been completely off. It's just conflicted with other things that are happening. Yeah, so it's definitely there. Councillor Pearson, then Casper.
Well, I think for me, and I agree, I think we need to have some different venues. I still really like the land use committee that we had on the last council, and I think it was an opportunity for an informal discussion. And I think that, to Ms. Hall's delegation report tonight, I'd like to see some form of informal communication where there's more dialogue back and forth. It felt better to me, anyways. That's just I'll support any kind of method of communication, whether it's town hall or whether it's a land use committee or not. So I like at least that dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. Councillor Casper.
Yeah, this is just one of the many options that should be included in a strategic plan, a communications plan. I'll even go as far as saying, maybe the district should have a newsroom that's right on their website, so that it's updated, so that anybody can get access to any relevant information on an ongoing daily basis, so that whoever wants to link with that information, they can feed it out to whoever they want, come hither, dither. Doesn't matter. But we're not being proactive enough. I'm the first one to agree to that. But, I think there's a way to do it where it actually is beneficial to the community at large, not just a select few of people in the community, but all the people who we represent. There are some questions and that will never be answered to anybody's satisfaction. I'll guarantee you that. Guarantee you that. You'll never be able to satisfy everybody in this town, no matter what answer you give them. So a town hall meeting for a purpose to address a whole pile of issues and to get answers may not really accomplish that means. It just might not. So, let's not kid ourselves here, because some people have different expectations of how this community should be run. We're elected. We have a responsibility. Our staff have a responsibility. We're all doing the best job we can. And they all believe that. We all believe that here. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here. I'll tell you that right now. So, we're doing the best, and this is one of many options, which I'll support. But I think we have to put it all in context here.
No, I completely agree. It's not the be-all. It might lead to ideas on other ways to engage. Someone asked me to have a Twitter town hall. I don't even know how that works, how to even start that. I'm open to the idea of hearing about it. I know how, but I can't even imagine crafting answers.
We might have to get 7 seconds.
Oh, longer than that. Like just typing that out, I don't know. And it's not, so I think because I don't know it, you sort of move away from it. But, I suppose it's something that if that's going to be helpful, it's something. But then again, you only catch the people that use Twitter. You won't catch the people that use other things. So it's just trying different things. And so I do like the motion. I think all of council embrace these ideas, and that's why they're in our strategic plan, and they're the ways that we want to move forward. And it's just getting caught up in the busyness of getting things done. Councillor Loggins?
I can help with the Twitter town hall. We can run it at the same time.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, maybe. Okay. I don't know. All right. Any further comments on the motion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to move into the public question and comment period of the agenda. If there's any members of the public that would like to comment, if you could please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Ellen Lures, 5526 Souk Road. I just wanted to comment, first of all, on the idea about the public consultation. Our first council had a very good forum, and it was held right in here. It was held with round tables, and everybody was invited. It was a whole Saturday spent here. And then I think there was part of a Sunday as well. And it was really well attended. People had opportunity to speak and get answers, and there was exchanges with other people, and a lot of ideas came forward. It was a very good forum. And I think we have to have more of that, because all it is here is we get 2 minutes to speak and a timer going. It makes me crazy. Because ideas don't follow time. Ideas and creative ideas come from within, and they take more than 2 minutes. And I think that has to happen. That kind of consultation has to happen. And I'm glad that also that you've included all the media in the process of getting information out, because that's very important. I'd like to see more rising and reporting of in-camera meetings. I think that we haven't had any for a long time. I'd like to see that happen as well. There was one other, with the Agricultural Land Commission, with the OCP. That was another thing that Gail Hall brought up. I agree it has to be by committee. I don't think it can be run by council. Having served on 2 OCP committees, and the amount of input that comes from people, you have to hear it from everyone. And it doesn't work that way with council. For some reason, it doesn't. You need to have everybody engaged. And with the Agricultural Land Commission, having served on that last committee, there was a lot of people talked about agriculture, and it went into the OCP, but it never was carried through. And I don't see it carried through. You haven't got that. What we'd asked, even in the zoning, our OCP had asked that people that were on our committee should have been on the zoning committee, and that was totally ignored. So it wasn't carried through on the zoning committee. So there needs to be better communication between council and the public, and I would hope that council would look at doing things better. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lurs. Other comments or questions from members of the public? Call for a second time? Okay. So we will move into our bylaw section. The first one is item B1, bylaw 604, official community plan amendment bylaw, and I believe we have a staff report. That be
I'm presenting the staff
Mr.
report
Howard?
tonight.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
As this has come before council on a couple of different occasions, I'm just going to go through the executive summary and just highlight a couple of the things, and then just field questions, if you will. Also on this one, there is also in a further part of the agenda is a request for the decision on the actual purchase of the closed road that's going to accompany this OCP application and rezoning application. So I can answer questions at this time about that, or if you want to defer it till it actually comes up on the agenda, I'll just leave that to your wishes. The owners of 6527 and 6509 Souk Road have initiated and are acting as the applicant to rezone that part of Section 14 Souk District shown as closed road on Plan VIP 78310, known as Kennedy Road. The property is approximately 470 meters in size. The application is to amend the zoning on the property from public recreation P1 to a split zone of general commercial C2 and service commercial C3. This will also require an OCP amendment for the portion of the parcel designated as park to community recreation. All application fees have been paid by the applicant. The use of Kennedy Road will be limited to unenclosed parking and landscaping in order to preserve the view corridor towards Souk Harbor from Souk Road and to achieve the neighborhood scale commercial use of the land in compliance with the OCP parking requirements. I could keep going, but I said this has been before council before. I'd like to take questions if you have any at this time.
Any questions to Mr. Howitt? Okay. Yeah. So I think in terms of process, perhaps would council then, there's a series of motions that would have to be broken up, but seeing it's looking like we can move on this. And the first one would be that bylaw number 604, official community plan amendment bylaw 400-7, and bylaw number 605, zoning amendment bylaw 600-13 be read a first time. Someone like to move that? Second. Councillor Loggins moved it and seconded by Councillor Casper. Question on the motion? Councillor Parkinson.
So I'm just...
Microphone.
Yep. I'm just a little confused that on page 101 we have the Kennedy closed road sale. So we're selling the property, and then is this in the right order? Like, because we're moving their recommendations for them to do something on the property that they don't own yet? Am I reading that right or wrong?
Sorry, the recommendation on page 31 is to give first and second reading to the OCP and zoning amendment. And then on page 101 is a request for a decision on the sale and disposition of the road.
Right. But for the OCP, is that for the people that are wanting to purchase the property, though? That's where I'm confused, that's all.
Yes. If you look at the information that was attached to the request for a decision on the sale, it explains through the agreements with in previous council deliberations that the road was closed. Half would go to one side, half would go to the other side, and the zoning would accompany that portion of the closed road to each side.
Okay, gotcha now.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. The second piece then is that bylaw number 604, official community plan amendment bylaw 400-7, and bylaw number 605, zoning amendment bylaw 600-13 be read a second time. Moved by Councillor Berger, seconded by Councillor Casper. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And then that staff be directed to schedule a public hearing for bylaw number 604 and bylaw number 605 in accordance with the requirements of the Community Charter and the Local Government Act. Moved by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. So that public hearing then will be at our next meeting in June. And I think to our Director of Corporate Services, does that cover off all the motions then for that?
Yes, for that item, Madam Mayor. Yes, it does.
Okay. All right. So then we will then move on to the next one, which is item B2, bylaw 642, zoning amendment bylaw for 7090 Grant Road, 2105 Furwood Place. And staff report would be by Ms. Rice. Okay.
Thank you. I sound very loud to myself. You can see the adjacent land uses around the site are more or less residential, RU4, R1, and the zoning specifications are there where you can see that the R1 minimum lot size is 1,000 square meters, and they're proposing to bring that down to 350 square meters. And the building heights come down a couple of meters, as well as the accessory buildings. And the lot coverage, it will go from 30% coverage up to 45% coverage. There's a proposal of what the lot or the existing lot would look like. You can't really see the property severs very well, but it kind of are the two horizontal lines if there were two on there. Sorry, I should have marked them darker. The zoning permitted uses basically are horticulture, single-family dwelling, or one duplex, and consistent with most of the zonings we have in these areas, you're allowed bed and breakfast, boarding, lodging, home-based business, secondary suite or a small suite, and vacation accommodation unit. Related to the OCP, it's in the community residential designation. You've probably seen this slide before, but I like the pictures to show what could possibly happen in that area. So we're encouraging low to medium density residential growth, along with some associated inappropriately scaled commercial development. Residential development here would be targeted towards the community growth area where municipal services can be provided or accessed in an efficient manner. All new development shall be challenged by the creation of the District of Souk Build Green checklists. So we're looking for efficient designs, to promoting high level of design and creativity in buildings, integrating innovations for building and site design that promotes sustainable development, excellent pedestrian connectivity throughout the district, and protecting development from slope instability. The site itself, we're going to look at a little bit quickly at the neighborhood analysis. And so one of the key things that you've seen over the last few meetings is that we've seen some development of this nature in the neighborhood. A few have come in with this R3 designation. The surrounding land uses are generally a mix of residential zonings and housing types dating usually from the 50s or 60s, 70s, and 80s. And basically, the neighborhood at this point is characterized by well-established trees and gardens, and they're located more or less along the straight section of Grant Road. The lot itself is slightly sloping outwards, and there is there's a creek on this a stream, going through it, which was sort of that double line on the proposal there. The site's partially covered with trees along the front lot line, and along the stream, it's basically a defined streamside protection area. We'll call this SPIA. And so the lot has two existing dwellings. The first was built in the 70s, and then there's a small rancher suite or cabin that was built in the 60s. There's one lot that has nothing on it that will be vacant. There was a stormwater management report done that basically states that doesn't need to have a whole lot done to it. The site can pretty much look after itself, so it's not flagged for any reason. And basically, from an amenity contribution policy, the developer doesn't need to provide one in this instance, but they will be responsible for contributing development cost charges. And other than that, the property is free and clear of all legal encumbrances. And so our recommendation, is that staff. What happened? Okay.
There are the recommendations then. Questions from council to staff. Councillor Pearson, then Loggins.
Is this inside the sewer specified area?
It is.
Furwood? I don't think Furwood's in sewer specified area.
It's Grant Road.
But Furwood's not.
But the parcel itself is at this point.
Okay. Good. On the front. Okay, but there's two titles there, right? Isn't that what we were talking about?
No, it's one title at this point. And then
okay, because you confused me because Furwood, you said 2105 Furwood Place. That's just the address of the house?
That's the address of the little cabin. And so the mobile, the manufactured home is the address on Grant Road. And so it's all, one is the primary dwelling, and then it's a secondary suite at this point. And so the cabin is a legal secondary suite.
But if we cut that into what looks like three length, then they'll be actually on Furwood, right? Because there will only be one access on Grant and then two on Furwood?
Yeah, that will come
and that's
through.
Outside of
that's just, it's subdivision.
Okay, but that's outside our sewer specified area. Furwood is.
Sorry, the
Sorry.
conversation is just with staff at this point? Not at this time, no. I'm waiting for staff to respond.
Okay.
So I believe the applicant has made arrangements that it will be, it's within the sewer specified area. That it doesn't come up on the map that I have showing that it's not.
Oh, okay. No. Okay.
Okay.
Because Hanlon and, because the two roads, Hanlon and Furwood, were not in sewer specified area when we started.
You want to speak to that, Rob?
The original lot, the lot that is being
parent.
proposed right now, the parent lot is serviced by sewer.
Correct.
And it is in the sewer service area for the lots that are being created.
Gotcha. Okay.
Councillor Loggins?
Thank you for the report. A few things. One, is the SPIA already determined?
The SPIA is determined, yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, there was no significant habitat. They're basically, they won't be allowed to store things within it or anything like that. But the biologist has recommended that the owner can be responsible enough to care for it.
Perfect. Okay. And the other is that this is the best bylaw in Souk's history, number 642. And
too funny.
And the third thing, one thing that was missing from the neighborhood analysis, and I'm going to have to bring this up with the next item on the agenda as well, is that we have no sidewalks. And while I completely support this, I'm going to keep bringing this up because we have a lot of development on Grant Road right now, and it's just getting busier and busier. Completely supported. It's definitely the next area that needs growth, but we desperately need a transportation plan for that area.
So I think that has been addressed as a part of where the money for the development cost charges will go. And when one of my first applications back whenever it was in early 2016, we had an image, but rather than sort of piece that standard along, we've just sort of decided that will be brought up at the time when the whole project would be tendered out at once and go from there.
One thing I will share, as I was on the district website, Mr. Howitt can maybe add to this, but in regards to Grant Road, there is a widening project that's gone out for tender now from Otter Point to Murray Road, and it's to widen that area so that there be some sort of trail or multi-use.
What we've done is we put a request for a proposal for a 1.5 meter widening of Grant Road on the south side from Otter Point, including the Otter Point intersection, some small improvements there, down to Maple. Mm-hmm. We were trying this one first to get some prices, just to see what kind of prices we are going to get. That way it'll allow us to do a better analysis on the rest of Grant Road. One of the problems we have on Grant Road right now is because the base is so bad that it's kind of limited where we can put sidewalks without doing some significant gravel and pavement works as well. Yeah. We're also looking at some improvements at the corner of Grant and where the bus stop is, I can't remember. And we're doing some shoulder work there to give people a better opportunity to get to the bus stop itself. I can't remember the name of the side street just off the top of my head, but we're going to do that as well. So
maybe that might help just in terms of...
It does and it doesn't. I don't want to go too far off topic, but my concern is that people are so trained, which in a way is a good thing, to walk facing traffic, that they do that on Grant Road on the north side. So there's space on the south side to walk. It's not ideal for strollers and et cetera, but people are still walking down the middle of the road on the north side. Anyway, I'll end it there.
Any other questions? Councillor Berger?
Not a question, but just a comment. This application is perfect for infill within our sewer specified area, and so I'd like to move that bylaw 642 zoning amendment bylaw be read a first time.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Councillor Berger, would you like to move the second piece? Absolutely. And that is that bylaw 642 zoning amendment bylaw 628 be read a second time. Moved by Councillor Berger, seconded by Councillor Casper. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And then the last one is that staff be directed to schedule a public hearing for bylaw 642, zoning amendment bylaw 600-28 in accordance with the requirements of the Community Charter and the Local Government Act. Moved by Councillor Casper, seconded by Councillor Loggins. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Great, thank you. That brings us to our next one, which is bylaw B3. Bylaw 643, zoning amendment bylaw 600-29, 7135 Grant Road. This is a rezoning application. Ms. Rice?
Yes. Okay. Thank you. I'll try not to repeat too much. Very similar neighborhood, just down a couple parcels. Is the last one. In this case, the applicant would like to rezone just short shy of a 3-acre parcel on Grant Road from R1, large lot residential, to medium lot, R2 zoning. The owner plans to subdivide this existing property at this time into 3 lots, which could ultimately permit 1 single-family dwelling or a duplex on each lot. The property is serviced with community water and sewer. Just skipping down to the good stuff here. We'll just go to, well, I'll just go back actually. Sorry, yeah, adjacent land uses are rural, RU4, manufactured home park, and R1 residential. So the proposal in this case, you can see, is a large piece, the 3 acres with 2 smaller chunks coming off the front. There's an aerial of the site at this point. I think it has a few less trees now. Again, the zoning specifications are existing at 1,000 square meters, and they will be reduced to 600 square meter lots. The height for principal dwellings is 12 meters. It remains the same for accessory buildings, and the lot coverage goes up slightly from 30% to 40%. Similar uses, horticultural, single-family dwelling, or 1 duplex lot. And within the official community plan designation, it's the same as the previous application, community residential. Again, residential development is targeted towards community growth areas where municipal services can be provided or accessed in an efficient manner. All new development shall be challenged with green build checklist. We want to promote design creativity in buildings and sustainability, as well as connectivity for pedestrians and avoid slope instability. And some of the neighborhood design observations here. Once again, we have a range of 60s, 70s, 80s infill housing pattern. We have some vacant lands as well as higher density manufactured home park. There are affordable housing opportunities in this neighborhood. There's rental units and suites, straight road, nearby post boxes, serviced by the bus system, mainly R2 housing in the area consistent with what's happening and what the applicant is asking for, and many new applications within close proximity to this. The OCP supports growth and densification to offset the cost of the existing sewer infrastructure. The site at this point is sloping with an initial drop from Souk Road. The site cover was formerly covered with trees and has been cleared to begin development activities. The new lots have been prepared, including site leveling and new drainage works. An engineering report has been prepared that provides a rainwater management plan that will be implemented at subdivision if this application is approved. This is what the rainwater and stormwater management looks like ultimately. And the developer in this case has agreed to provide a monetary contribution based on single-family dwelling density. The base density for this subject property is 14.4 dwelling units, and any units above that they are requested to provide amenity contribution. And so they're willing to do that. And so if this application is approved by council, a Section 219 covenant would be registered on title to address the contributions made towards the proposed development of the site. Other than that, the property is presently free and clear of legal encumbrances.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. Councillor Pearson and Loggins?
Same question. Is this in the sewer specified area?
It is.
So the 2 lots that were just up the road that we had to included in the sewer specified area.
Yes.
They were missing, but this big property was in the sewer specified area?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Loggins, then Casper.
I just wanted to say that we need sidewalks on Grant Road because I'm sure no one's heard me say that for the past year. And also I wanted to say thank you to both Ms. Rice and Ms. Lasician for the work that you've done because these presentations are really great. That's all. Thank you.
Councillor Casper.
Yeah, there were a number of one-off applications to be included in the sewer specified area at that extreme edge of Grant Road. Right. And this one was done some time ago, but it hadn't proceeded as far as, an official application, but that's what I recall. Because not all that area was originally included.
Yeah, it's just funny that we just had to go to the sewer specified area for those 2 lots just next door, that's all. I was trying to see the map on here, but I can't.
Okay.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions? There is a recommendation that's that bylaw number 643, zoning amendment bylaw 600-29, be read a first time. Moved by Councillor Loggins, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Number 2, that bylaw number 643, zoning amendment bylaw 600-29, be read a second time. Moved by Councillor Loggins, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And that staff be directed to schedule a public hearing for bylaw number 643, zoning amendment bylaw 600-29, in accordance with the requirements of the Community Charter and the Local Government Act. Moved by Councillor Loggins, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any further discussion on the public hearing? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. That brings us to bylaw B4, bylaw number 644, zoning amendment bylaw Silver Spray water lot rezoning. And Ms. Rice, are you presenting this one? Ms. Lashane is okay. Thank you.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. The water lot shown hatched on the subject property map is the area affected by this application. The same area is simultaneously under application with the province for a license of occupation by the applicant. The water lot encompasses approximately 2,600 square meters and is situated along the southern boundary to the entrance of Sauk Harbor. And for those that know the local geography well, the site is located between Possession Point and Pike Point. The water is currently Zone W1, which is a passive recreation zone, which allows things such as government wharf, fishing, habitat enhancement, pier, and breakwater. The applicant has put forward a proposal for a W3 zone to accommodate a dock and some commercial and research activities. This will also facilitate access to the water by the public. The upland area from the water is zoned for a destination resort within the Silver Spray zone, which focuses on uses that are complementary to the overall resort being established. This proposal is therefore consistent with the upland zone. As with any rezoning, we reviewed the application in the context of the official community plan. There are no specific policy statements around water designations in the OCP currently. However, there are some general statements regarding economic development, tourism, environment, and parks and trails that support applications of this nature, which I've noted in my staff report. Staff recommend approval of the rezoning because the site is within the official community plan's water designation. Overall, the application is consistent with the policies outlined in the OCP. The proposed site is adjacent to an upland area that's designated for destination resort development, and the proposal is consistent with Council's strategic priority of facilitating and promoting long-term community prosperity. I can take your questions if you have any.
Any questions to staff on the report? Okay, there is a recommendation put forward, and that is that bylaw number 644, zoning amendment bylaw 600-30, be read a first time. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Berger.
Sorry, I just have a question. It's not actually to the motion. I just was wondering, I just was reading here that they have an application to the province. What's the time frame on that? Is it?
I'm not sure
your
about this.
timeline?
I'm not sure about the specific timing, but before the lease is finalized with the province, they have to have assurance that we're going to rezone the land accordingly. So as soon as it goes to public hearing, that gives them some affirmative position so they can move forward with their application. I can't speak for timing of that, though.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. That bylaw number 644, zoning amendment bylaw 600-30 be read a second time. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And that staff be directed to schedule a public hearing for bylaw number 644, zoning amendment bylaw 600-30 in accordance with the requirements of the Community Charter and the Local Government Act. Moved by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any discussion on them? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, thank you. All four of these public hearings will be held at the same time, which will be the next regular council meeting on June 27th. Okay. That moves us into our reports requiring action section. The first one up is RA1, Kennedy Closed Road Sale. Mr. Howard, are you presenting on this?
Yes. Again, this one has come before council on a couple of different occasions. Again, I can go through the executive summary and then field questions. Harborview Center Limited, Harborview, wishes to develop its property located at 6527 Souk Road and requires additional parking for its residential development. EJ Charters Limited wishes to formalize access and create additional parking for their site. Accordingly, Harborview and EJ Charters wishes to purchase the adjacent Kennedy Road. Beyond that, before we get into the questions, as you well know, we as a district agreed to close the road, and in that agreement was half would go to EJ Charters, half would go to Harborview Center, and the cost would be distributed appropriately between the both. The amounts that are listed in the agreement for sale in your package are based predominantly on an appraisal, but the reduction of price was based on some expenses that they incurred over time as this process was going through for survey costs, legal costs, etc. And that's how we ended up with the costs, or that's how we ended up with the price as agreed to by both parties. As a condition of this agreement, both sides of the road would be consolidated with the adjoining properties. So, for instance, EJ Charters, all those little lots would be consolidated into one with the closed road. On the other side for, Harborview Center, that one particular lot would be consolidated with that particular portion of the closed road. So we'd end up with two lots. The agreement for sale is a little bit convoluted. There is some consolidation plan, the road is actually closed, the transfer takes place, and then consolidation plans take place after that. So,
any further questions to Mr. Howard from council? Okay, there is a recommendation, and is that council directs staff to publish notice for the proposed sale of the Kennedy Closed Road to Harborview Center Limited and EJ Charters Building Limited in accordance with sections 26 and 94 of the Community Charter. Moved by Councillor Casper and seconded by Councillor Ray. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, thank you. Our next one is RA2, Development Permit Application 2057, Otter Point Road. And Ms. Lachine is presenting.
The owner of this property has applied for a development permit to construct a one-story, 315 square meter, which is approximately 3,400 square feet, commercial building to be used as a microbrewery, tasting room, and mercantile space. The property is approximately 1,300 square meters, is zoned C2 General Commercial, and is currently used as a parking lot. The subject property falls within the town center, and the application has been evaluated against the OCP's Development Permit Area Number 1, which looks at the form and character of buildings proposed in the town center. This is the proposed building and parking layout. There will be a single vehicle access point into the site. All frontage improvements along Otter Point Road will be the responsibility of the applicant and will meet the subdivision and development standards bylaw at the time of building permit. This includes sidewalks, the relocation of a transit stop slightly to the north, street trees, and boulevard plantings. When analyzing the site, staff reviewed the building and the layout in accordance with the zoning bylaw and can confirm that all zoning requirements have been achieved, including screening, landscaping, and parking requirements. This proposal includes 4 surplus parking spaces above the required 12 spaces, 2 accessible parking stalls, as well as bicycle parking, and a screened refuse removal area at the back of the building. The applicant has proposed a mix of cladding materials, including a black metal roof, red galvanized siding, combined with Lakeshore River rock, and natural fir trim and beams. The focal point of the building will be the entrance to the tasting room, which will feature a large fir tree trunk. The entrance will be covered and will integrate the company logo above the door. The application has met the West Coast character outlined in the OCP by incorporating high level of design and contrast in the materials chosen, while respecting the local geography and the maritime history. Also of note is the northern face of the building. The proposed building will be constructed to a 0-meter setback along that boundary, which requires a firewall. The applicant has proposed incorporating their logo on this wall and will use variation of brick and stone to make the firewall more visually appealing. The signage for this building has not yet been applied for, but will be sized in accordance with the sign bylaw once the permits have been submitted. The signage shown just gives an indication of how the signage will be incorporated onto the building. This drawing shows the front and the rear elevation of the proposed building. And the upper drawings show the north elevation of the building and the south elevation of the building. The lower drawing shows the front of the building with the landscaping incorporated along the frontage. The landscaping proposed will include plants appropriate to the local climate. The planting plan shown here indicates significant plantings within the Otter Point Road right-of-way, as well as along the rear of the property. The landscaping along the rear boundary will buffer the parking area from the property to the east, and staff have included a condition that the fencing provided along the southern boundary and the northern boundary are a solid decorative fence, which will buffer the adjacent uses appropriately. Overall, staff are satisfied that the zoning bylaw requirements have been met and that the form and character requirements in the OCP have been achieved through this application. Further to that, the application is consistent with the town center plan and is in line with council's corporate strategic direction. I believe the applicant is here also to address any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Lashane. This is really exciting for the town center. It's great to see something like this come forward. I did think that the car lot itself was quite attractive as a car lot. You know, just with the plantings and the vehicle and the lights, it's great. It was a really nice car lot. So, but at the same time, a microbrewery and employment, and to have something locally crafted and the economics from it are very exciting. So it's really great to see this come forward. So I'll be supporting it. But questions or comments from council? I have Councillor Loggins and Pearson.
Yeah, I'll support it and I'll move the recommendation. And I would say that if this goes through, it would be a historic achievement for Souk. It's really cool to see this come together. And I also have a question. Which one of you guys is going to be in charge of decorating the decorative fence? Don't answer that.
I said in the motion.
Okay, so the motion is the staff recommendation as stated. That's what you're moving and seconding. Okay, Councillor Pearson.
I'm really glad to see that this is coming forward, and the 3 mediums on the front of the building, including fir and some rocks and things like that, are consistent with our town center guidelines that we don't have, that I would like to see brought to fruition. Well done, and I'll be supporting the motion, and how could I not vote for beer?
Yeah. Any, Councillor Casper?
Yeah, just if you could bring up the big plan again. So where's the actual property line for the property? Is it at the end Right, does the building go right to the property line on Otter Point Road?
The building does go nearly to zero on Otter Point Road,
Nearly.
within inches.
And so all of this landscaping is municipal property? Is it municipal?
Along the frontage of Otter Point Road, it is within the road right-of-way.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, the only thing I was thinking is it's too bad, that we couldn't see an incorporation of like more of a patio design so that I don't have a problem with somebody utilizing, that area, for people to go sit or whatever and taste or along those lines. That's where I'm coming from. And I don't know, but they do it in Victoria. They just issue these permits to occupy the right of way, and then it's all approved, right? As long as you got a license to occupy. I'm only thinking.
I think it's the liquor license.
Yeah, but they still drink out in the street.
Well, festivals.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I just throw that out.
Yeah. Any.
We brought it up with Catherine actually, possibly doing that. We weren't sure how it would work with the city because it's the city municipal property. But if there's a way that we can incorporate a patio there, then we are open for discussion.
Well, without trying to burden or bog down the process, I would support anything like that, because I think that the more people that are on the streetscape,
Yeah.
as opposed to in the building, and I'm not saying just the drinking aspect, but just having people sitting there. You see what I'm getting at? And it makes it look a little more alive and less sterile. So to me, I personally wouldn't have a problem with somebody coming in with some kind of an application and we work something out. Something to think about.
No, I would agree with that. It's when you do have people, it adds to the vitality. So I would just encourage staff to work with the applicant on how that can be worked out. Okay, Councillor Berger, I believe.
No, that was just it. I just wasn't sure if we needed to provide a motion or direction to staff to look into what it takes to get a patio happening as they do downtown Victoria.
We'll deal with the motion, the live motion first, and then we can look at making one after that. So I'll call the question then on the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. And then Councillor Berger would like to move a motion that for staff to work with the applicant to look at patio seating in the Otter Point Road right away.
We can work with them if they choose to go that route.
Okay.
I think there is an issue with regards to potential liquor licensing issues. But if they're willing to move forward with it, we were willing to support them and work with them.
Okay, so we'll just leave it then as direction then to staff to work out. Okay? Good. Anything further? Okay, good luck, and thank you very much for the application. It's very exciting. Okay, our next item of business is RA3. It's the District of Sooke Annual Report. So at this meeting, we are presenting the annual report. It's been completed, and it will move forward. It's live, I believe. Is this on our website, or it should be? And this will then move forward and to our annual meeting, which should be in July, or next meeting in June.
Your Worship, as it states there in the report, that this is a direction basically to post it on the website to give the public their 2 weeks review, and then to come back on the 27th for a public consultation.
Okay. Councillor Berger? Seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay. Let's see. That moves us to RI3, Mayor and Council reports. We've done the first two. Councillor Casper?
Yes, thank you. I have 3 items I'd like to just speak about. This past weekend, we had our very first forum of all councils, and that was held on Saturday at the First People's House at University of Victoria. And it was hosted by the First Nations Task Force of the CRD, which I'm a member of. And I think it was well received and well attended. I know that not all council members had the ability to come, but Councillor Pearson and Councillor Logans did manage to come, and I'm sure they will have some good words about what we heard from the professor at the campus there in regard to First Nations issues, and it was a real education program. Also, I was at the FCM along with yourself. Mind you, you and I didn't see very much of each other. We were very busy. And I just want to point out two things. One is that I went to a session that dealt with emergency first responders, fire departments, et cetera. And one of the things that I heard pretty loud and clear is that not only ourselves, but across Canada, are we doing enough in fire prevention and inspection? And that seemed to come through loud and clear, that their tendency is to react to fire situations and problems, and a lot more can be done in regard to the prevention, especially in the inspection side, and making sure that where inspections are required, that they are in fact being done. It was also an opportunity to meet a number of people from across the country. And throughout that process, while I was there, people were asking, well, where do you come from? Well, I come from Souk. Oh, we know where Souk is. What are you doing in Souk? So I just started to rattle off the list of things that we've been doing. You know, the land purchase, both from the district side, the changes that we've done in the town centre, the purchase of that golf course through the Recreation Commission function. And I started talking about all of those accomplishments that this council and staff have been done. And they basically said, well, how much did your taxes go up? And when I explained to them from the municipal side, it was 0.85%, they were aghast. They just couldn't believe that we could accomplish so many things without jacking up the taxes at a huge rate. So it just proved to me that we are on the right track on a number of fronts. And other communities aren't as fortunate as we are, I'll tell you that right now. We're viewed as the envy across Canada. I know everybody likes to brag about their communities, and they talk about their community being the best. But when they hear about our community in Vancouver Island and this part of the country, like, they are very envious, because they know we didn't have very much snow. We actually had about this much, and it disappeared in a few hours. And the last thing I just want to report out on is it's in relation to the bylaw covering access to the leach. And so at the CRD, we approved that bylaw. And so now there's a formal process for groups and organizations to make an application to actually have access, controlled access, in what I would hope is a well-respectful manner. So it's been a long time coming, and it's been very argumentative by a lot of people for months, so it's done. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Casper. Other members of council? Councillor Ray, then Pearson, and...
Thank you. So I attended the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board meeting at the end of May in Nanaimo, and was pleased to announce, in partnership with the library, to the trustees that Souk had a partnership in principle with the library for the building of our new library. And VERL is also the recipient of 2 international citations for their work from the American Library Association, which is quite an accomplishment because it's North America wide. I also had the pleasure to represent Mayor and Council at the EMCS graduation ceremonies at U of Vic. It was a great opportunity, and I thoroughly enjoyed being there watching the grads from 2016. The speech that I gave is short, but it can be found, actually the Souk Voice News has it printed in its entirety in their June 13th issue, and I thought maybe perhaps we could get it on the website, the district website. And just lastly, I'd like to correct a comment made by Ms. Hall this evening that she attributed to me, and that, in fact, my comment was that there had not been a comprehensive review of all of the bylaws since incorporation in 1999. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ray. Councillor Pearson.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to build on what Councillor Casper said, and Councillor Loggins and myself and Councillor Casper, as well as our CAO, attended the Forum of All Councils at UVic. And it was, it's part of the CRD Special Task Force on First Nations engagement. And there was two speakers, Adam Olson, who many people are familiar with. He was the leader of the Green Party, and Robina Thomas, who's a PhD in Aboriginal Studies. So was very, very interesting, and the approach was past, present, and future about how to engage First Nations and Indigenous people. And it was very, very eye-opening for me. And what I really liked about it was not about making people feel bad about the past, but it was about how do we move forward in that level of engagement. And it was very eye-opening, and it was very emotional for me, actually, to hear some of the stories that were being shared around the room. And there were several First Nations leaders from the local area, including Port Renfrew, and unfortunately our leaders from Sauk Nation didn't attend. But it was very, very eye-opening about how we as local governments really need to rethink about our approach to First Nations and how valuable that thought process will be as we move forward. So, anyways, it was very well done. So I will encourage all my other fellow council members to attend any of these sessions in the future. So.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. Councillor Loggins?
I did miss the Horseshoe Pit celebration, which I was looking forward to, but I kind of forgot that, even though I work at the school, I forgot that the graduation ceremony was the same day. So I did go to that instead and did listen to Councillor Ray's speech. It was great, as well as the other speakers, and hopefully everyone got a chance to read the valedictorian speech in the newspaper. He did excellent in his presentation, and I think it was one of the best grad ceremonies that we've had in quite a while. As it's been mentioned, I went to the cultural training at UVic as well, and it was definitely an excellent morning. I'm not fond of being up so early, but it was so worth it. One of the highlights was that young Gracie Blackwood, who is part of the Pocochin First Nation, she did the opening and closing prayer, and she spoke both prayers completely in her traditional language. So that was really great to see and be part of. And also just the fact that there were so many First Nations leaders there. It just shows that there are a lot of people who are willing to work together and move forward. And a few questions were asked of us, which I have yet to provide answers for, but I do have them. And they were, how can the CRD support us in becoming more knowledgeable about Indigenous history, culture, and impacts of colonialism? And how might the region better acknowledge Indigenous history? And one of the things that came to mind that has been thrown around a few times although they weren't there, our local First Nations and also with our council is putting up signage around the area that indicates where the sacred places are, what their history is, what the names of those places are. And I think that would be a really great addition to our community. And that was it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Loggins. Councillor Parkinson?
On May 25th, we had the Sauk Program for the Arts Committee meeting. We're gearing up for the Communities in Bloom, and the judges are arriving on Thursday, July 21st. The evaluation date is on July 22nd. From my understanding, Councillor Casper is going to be heading up the tour with the judges. And the Prestige has offered the 2-night stay for both judges, so that's really nice. And the museum, everybody has been donating a lot of time and effort. On Saturday, I attended the Charity Celebrity Car Wash in Victoria, which gives elected officials, media personalities, and many others the opportunity to learn about homelessness and poverty in our communities. They took us, it was my first tour of our place, and it's quite an impressive place, 4 stories, and they have over 500 people volunteering there, along with 2 doctors who are there, and they have hairstylists, they have estheticians, they have everybody taking care of the needs of the people there. So that was quite interesting. I also attended the Sauk Region Health Summit along with a number of my fellow councillors, which was very interesting listening to Dr. Stanwyck as he presented the statistics concerning our community. And I also attended the Horseshoe opening on behalf of the mayor. I went early and got a lesson, so I knew what I was doing but it didn't help. And they had about 40 people in attendance, and that day 12 new members signed up. So I thought that was great. And then on Sunday I attended the Navy League Cadet Corps and the Canadian Sea Cadets annual review on behalf of the mayor. And the kids range in age from 8 to 18. I handed out the Citizenship Award on behalf of the District of Sauk. And there's a young cadet who would like to come to council to present. He had made a paddle, so he had presented to me there, and I suggested that he comes to council. So it'd be great if we could, I'll give you his name, and we can put him on the agenda with a number of the other cadets to present. On Monday, I went to the...
I forget about my own stuff.
I know. The mural unveiling I attended with Ebony, and that was fun, and trying to shoot hoops, and I realized I'm no longer good at any of those sports anymore. It was actually quite embarrassing. And then on the 7th was the Parks and Trails Committee meeting. We had a presentation on the invasive species in our parks and what we need to do to control them. And it was the Juan de Fuca trail system that eradicated basically the broom on Whiff and Spit. And now they're looking at taking out invasive species in Ed McGregor Park. So I think they'll be coming forward with what's happening with that. And the last thing was the Heart and Stroke Foundation Big Bike Ride, which there were 4 teams that participated in that, and the team that I was on raised over $5,000 for the Heart and Stroke Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parkinson. Councillor Berger?
Thank you. Just a quick Sea Park update. Tomorrow actually is the date that Sea Park will take possession of the Dominion Creek Golf Course, and they'll be opening it as a golf course sometime in July. There's not a grand opening date yet, but it should be up and running in July. Also, Sea Park is shut down right now for their pool maintenance, started today until July 1st. And one thing that the Lions do every single year is they pay for all the grade 2 students within the district to get free swimming lessons. So this past year, 174 students were able to take advantage of learning how to swim by the Lions. So
Bravo.
that was pretty remarkable to have that many kids there.
Bravo.
All right, thank you, members of council. For myself, I'll just highlight the health summit was very successful. I think the working group got the direction that we needed from the public at the event. We are in the process of putting together a report that can be distributed, and that'll include the infographic. We had a visual scribe sort of capture the event that day, and that's in my office right now, but it's also in digital form, as well as photography, and also my report out as to what accomplishments have occurred. That'll all be put together. We are reprioritizing, or we are setting our priorities, and the intent will be to, I've put in a meeting request with the Minister of Health for UBCM for some items specific to Sauk in September, so hopefully that meeting will be granted. It was a last-minute decision for me to attend the FCM, so I'd like to acknowledge and thank our acting mayor for being available, and for Councillors Parkinson, Loggins, and Ray for attending various community events on my behalf. There is a flu running through my house right now, so Councillor Loggins is attending the MCS Awards ceremony for me tomorrow night. FCM was interesting at looking at Winnipeg. I think just what struck me is I'd kind of forgotten what it's like to be in a winter city, but in the sense that there's, I think of vitality in a town, and it was just so quiet in the town, in the downtown. There's like nobody around. There's nobody, nothing's open. It didn't feel safe in that regard. And even during the day on a Monday, I was out taking a walk, and there's nobody walking. Now, I guess in parts, people are using the skywalks and the underground and the like. You just don't see anyone outside walking. It was interesting. And then it's the case people work, and then they clear out, they head out to the suburbs. And so I know they're trying to do things to attract more people into the area, and it's something that when you depend on a vehicle, you lose the vitality. And that's where I think with the development permit that we saw earlier. It's bringing vitality to our town center, and it's something that's so important. We did hear a lot about the infrastructure funding from the Prime Minister. A lot of it is sort of the pieces that we've already heard. The opposition, everyone, all the parties seem to be in line in terms of seeing that the funding gets to the municipalities without a lot of bureaucracy or red tape, so that we can determine the projects that need the funding and that the funding is made available quickly in an efficient, streamlined manner. And it seems that all the opposing parties are on board and will hold the Prime Minister and his party to account there. So with some of the projects that we have underway, we hope to see some of that funding come our way. So on that note, I'm just going to move on. That brings us to correspondence pieces. C1, there's correspondence received from May 19th to June 16th. There is an action item, and that's from the Sioux Community Arts Council. Every 2 years, they've put forward a request to waive the fees for their event. Councillor Casper?
Because my wife she's part of a group that received money from that organization.
But that doesn't put, if she's an artist though.
No, she's not. But she's a member of that, or her group received money from that organization.
She's with the Sioux Community Arts Council?
No, her group received money from them. So I don't know if I should be in here, because I stood out last time when they got the grant.
That's up to you to decide. To me, it seems a bit.
They're not getting a grant.
They're not getting a grant. It's just waiving the fees for the art in the park. So, okay, so that's moved by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Ray. I think you're fine. All those in favor of waiving the fees? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay. There's also another item where I wonder if, while I was away, was there a dialogue with someone about logging truck traffic? And he's looking for responses. The email, I've learned, we have a mayor and council email that it's mayor and council at souk.ca, but it goes to info and then it comes to us. So it doesn't hit us directly. So he was looking for a time frame needed for us to respond regarding the email traffic. I mean, usually when I get emails, I respond when I have an answer. I try to keep on top of them, but I don't quite know.
Your Worship, this was included because we automatically include any of the correspondence in council, but the person in question has been contacted by email, and we've basically informed them that any speeding issue or issue with roads is the jurisdiction of the RCMP. It's not a municipal issue, so they should follow up in that route.
Okay. Councillor Pearson?
Yeah, through you to staff and maybe to engineering. Is there a charge, or is there something, because the logging trucks are really pounding the road, like the Highway 14 is taking a beating. Is there any kind of, like, I know it's not our jurisdiction, right, technically, right, but driving the Sioux Road every day, I noticed that the wear and tear on it, and it's got to be something happening from these logging trucks.
The Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure could put weight restrictions on Highway 14 if they felt it would be useful to do so. But under normal circumstances, if you've got a legal loaded logging truck that's licensed, they won't deal with it. Normally weight restrictions only come on in the springtime.
Councillor Casper?
Well, I was just going to add, but then in order to do that, they'd have to have an engineering study to prove that there's going to be damage caused by those vehicles. And, it's the province's road. It may run through our municipality. We have no control whatsoever. None. Zero. I'd have a concern if they were running through our streets. That's a different story. But they're not.
Well, they have. I've seen one come down Wadhams, but there might have been a reason why. I mean, maybe the landscape.
The email that I saw that you're referring to was specifically to Highway 14, West Coast Highway.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Loggins?
I'm just wondering if there is any way we could perhaps write a letter to the. I know it's a little bit of work, but just advise them, like the logging companies, that we're aware of this. Like, I grew up on West Coast Road and had to wait for the bus on the side of the road where there's no edge to it, and the logging trucks will go by at like 100 plus kilometers an hour. So it is really dangerous too for our students. So I'm wondering, I know that we don't have any power to do anything about it in particular, but can we at least put that word out there?
I think we can.
I'll make the motion then.
Yeah. No, absolutely, because it's the speeding, it's all those things, and it's early in the morning, and there are people trying to get to places, and they can be driving aggressively. So, okay, so that is motion. Is any discussion on the motion? Councillor Berger?
What was the motion? That was my question. What's the motion? Yeah.
The motion is that we're sending a letter to the Logging Association.
To the logging company.
The logging company regarding the. Yeah.
Your worship, is that all logging companies that do business in Souk? Is it?
There's only a couple.
Is there? Okay.
Yeah. It's the same, like there was a time when Sun River was doing development and some of the contractors were dropping nails and were speeding up and down the hill. We sent a letter and said, look, for the safety of all those concerns, can you please talk to your crew? And I don't know if it'll help. It's an action anyway. Councillor Ray?
Yeah, just my comment is that a lot of those logging trucks are coming from the licensed timbered areas, and they've got Duncan addresses on the side. So perhaps maybe a letter to the Logging Association to share with the trucks.
Yeah.
Then that way it goes out as a general comment, just asking, and there'll be other communities that would benefit by it too.
It was the same, like when we were doing the roundabout construction, there was a lot of concern in the community that a logging truck could not navigate the roundabout. And I had talked to someone with Logging BC, maybe at AVICC or something, and I did get a few emails from logging drivers saying, don't worry about it, it's fine, we'll be able to navigate this, and we do it all the time, and look at what we have to drive through in the forest. And so the word did get out, and sure enough, we haven't had an issue. So, I mean, I think it's something, and we have residents that are counting the logging trucks going through the community, so I think it's a good action. It might do something. Okay, so that is the motion. The mayor, on behalf of council, send a letter to all logging companies operating in the district. Or I think it's more like driving through the district of Souk, because they're not operating in our municipality, but they are passing through.
On highway toward.
Yeah.
My only concern when you say all logging companies, I just don't know how realistically we can identify all of the logging companies. And if you're making it as a resolution, it should be able to stand. So my thinking is, if a friendly amendment, is that it go through the Logging Association to be distributed to the logging companies.
And that's in there. Mr. Howitt?
I was just going to suggest there is an association called the Truck Loggers Association.
That's right. Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. Okay. All right, any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. One thing I'll share with council, there is a proclamation in here, and I realize this is my error, that I have been handling proclamations not in accordance with our policy. We have a policy on proclamation.
You've just been sending them out?
No, actually, in actual fact, I've been bringing them forward to council. Do you support this proclamation? And then council votes on it, and then I send out the proclamation, right? Where in fact, as the mayor, I can identify the proclamations that I would like to make, and then I will provide you with the proclamation after I have so proclaimed. It actually doesn't need to come to council, but I give you the proclamation. Pardon me?
We like to have a say too.
Well, I know. I'm just saying that's the policy, but in terms of streamlining things, then so I'm going to try the policy because it has been democratically put in place, and I need to observe it. Okay. So no surprises. Maybe see if you read the reader file. Okay.
Yeah, I know. I read it. There is one here. It sounds like a good one.
So there's I'll just ask then council to receive the C1 correspondence. Moved by Councillor Berger, seconded by Councillor Loggins. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Then we have I1, information and correspondence from May 19th to June 6th. Are there any action? There's quite a few in here. Different invitations, letters? Yeah. Okay, well, yeah, it's just the time frame, so moved receipt by Councillor Berger, seconded by Councillor Pearson. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. Seconded, opposed, motion's carried.